Hi, very glad to see you on the channel. Before you start listening to the story, write in the comments whether you like the voice on the video. I returned home earlier than usual one rainy evening, the kind of night that makes you feel every drop of regret and every bit of determination all at once. As I stepped into our quiet house, I noticed something amiss, a small, inconspicuous envelope peeking out from behind a stack of mail on our entry table. Curiosity got the better of me, and with cautious hands, I slid it out and opened it. Inside lay an elegant ticket to a high-profile charity gala, one I knew my wife had mentioned as a potential special event in passing. But what made my heart quicken wasn't the ticket itself. It was the accompanying note, written in a neat script that read, "For a night to remember, with love from Brandon." My mind raced with a silent storm of thoughts. Brandon, my own sister's husband, the one my wife had casually brushed off in conversation as nothing more than a friendly acquaintance. At first, I felt a surge of indignation, but then a cold calculation took hold. I realized that this gift, so carefully concealed, was intended as a token for her secret affair, a secret that now lay in my hands like a loaded weapon. Rather than confront my wife immediately, I decided on a course of action that would allow me to both verify the truth and, perhaps, have a bit of my own clever revenge. I tucked the envelope into a drawer and resolved to turn this discovery into a prank that would spoil the gift while I continued to monitor her behavior. The next morning, while Hannah was busy preparing for school, I devised a plan. I purchased a series of outlandish, garish accessories, an absurdly large novelty bow tie, a pair of glittery cufflinks, and a pocket square so bright it could rival a carnival, that I secretly swapped with the ticket envelope. That evening, at dinner, I casually mentioned, "Hannah, I saw something odd in the mail this morning, a gift addressed from someone named Brandon. I wonder if you'd received it." Her eyes flickered with brief confusion before she forced a smile. "Oh, that? It must have been a mistake. I didn't pay any attention to it." I nodded thoughtfully, masking my inner satisfaction as I continued eating in silence. Later, while she was out grading papers, I retreated to our study and began checking online, tracking the whereabouts of the delivery, scanning social media for any hints of Brandon's involvement, and setting up a quiet surveillance schedule that would let me monitor her routines without arousing suspicion. I rehearsed a series of lines in my head that I might use if her excuses ever became too elaborate. Sometimes the truth hides in plain sight. I murmured to myself as I sipped lukewarm coffee, the evidence of her hidden world beginning to piece itself together. Over the next few days, I observed small anomalies, a changed schedule, a phone that seemed to light up at odd times, and subtle hints that she was preoccupied with thoughts beyond our mundane life. My mind churned with a mixture of grim amusement and a methodical desire to uncover more. I even set up a discreet reminder to revisit the mailbox each evening, hoping for another slip-up or more evidence that could confirm my growing suspicions. I wasn't angry, at least not outwardly, but there was a cold clarity in my eyes, a resolve that I would not allow my life to be dictated by someone else's secrets. I began jotting down details in a small notebook kept in a drawer, each entry a piece of the puzzle that, I hoped, would eventually reveal the full picture of her deception. Even as I carefully planned my next steps, I couldn't help but feel a dark thrill at having outsmarted a deceit that had been so carefully hidden. At night, as the rain tapped a steady rhythm on the windows, I lay awake thinking of the implications, of the masked messages and the concealed gifts, and I silently vowed to use this discovery as my leverage. Though my heart remained calm, each tick of the clock fueled my resolve to expose the truth. I knew that soon enough, the facade would crumble, and I would be ready with every bit of evidence neatly organized and every prank in place to ensure that her deception would be laid bare for all to see. I returned home one quiet afternoon after a long day at work, expecting nothing more than the usual routine. As I stepped through the door, I noticed a subtle but unusual disturbance near the entry table, a small, neatly wrapped package that I did not recall seeing before. My curiosity piqued. I carefully picked it up and examined the elegant wrapping and the stylish card attached to it. The card read simply, For a night to remember from Brandon. My mind immediately raced to the whispered rumors I had heard about Brandon, my sister-in-law's husband, and the secret glances exchanged with my wife, Hannah, during those seemingly innocent parent-teacher evenings at her school. Though I had never fully believed the worst, the sight of the package stirred a quiet storm of suspicion. Rather than confront Hannah directly, I decided to take a measured approach. I tucked the package away in a drawer, my mind already formulating a plan, not out of anger, but with a desire to expose the truth without causing immediate upheaval in our home. Over the next several days, I began to notice subtle changes in Hannah's behavior. She became increasingly evasive when I casually inquired about her day, and the excuse of being busy with work began to feel hollow. I observed that she would often glance at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking, and her smile would vanish for a moment when I walked into the room unexpectedly. Determined to confirm my suspicions, I started paying closer attention, silently noting every inconsistency, every unexplained detail. One evening, while Hannah was in the kitchen preparing dinner, I retrieved the package from its hiding place and examined it again. The wrapping was immaculate, and inside, I discovered an extravagant accessory, a designer cufflink set that was clearly meant for a man with refined tastes. My mind reeled at the implication. Hannah had prepared a gift for Brandon, a gift that symbolized more than mere appreciation. It was a token of an illicit connection. The irony wasn't lost on me, and a part of me felt a strange satisfaction knowing that her secret was now in my hands. Instead of launching into a confrontation, I decided on a more subtle approach. I crafted a harmless prank that would spoil the gift while ensuring that Hannah would remain oblivious to my discovery, at least until the truth unraveled on its own. I purchased a set of ridiculous novelty cufflinks, garish and over-the-top, completely the opposite of the elegant set intended for Brandon. Late one night, when the house was cloaked in darkness and Hannah was sound asleep, I carefully replaced the expensive cufflink set with the absurd ones, making sure not to leave any trace of my meddling. The next morning, I observed her routine from a distance, silently noting every move as she prepared for the day. When Hannah eventually retrieved the package, I imagined her surprise and confusion upon discovering that the intended gift had been transformed into something laughably inappropriate. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I kept a close watch on her behavior, curious to see if this small act of mischief would alter the dynamics of her secret rendezvous. Over the following days, I noted that Hannah's responses to questions about her tattoo sessions grew more guarded, yet she remained oblivious to the fact that I had found and ruined the gift. My mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Part of me felt a quiet vindication, while another part was steeling itself for what might come next. I scribbled notes in a small journal, detailing every observation and every subtle change in her routine, determined to compile enough evidence to understand the full scope of her deception. In the silence of the night, as I sat alone with my thoughts, I couldn't help but wonder if my harmless prank had planted a seed of doubt in her mind, or if she would simply dismiss it as a careless error. I resolved to remain patient and observant, trusting that time would reveal the truth. The package and its ruined contents had become a silent symbol of betrayal, a small yet potent reminder that nothing is ever as it seems. I tucked away my notes and closed my journal with a quiet promise. I would continue to gather every detail until the hidden layers of her double life were fully exposed. Ever since I discovered that mysterious gift, an elegant ticket and a note signed by someone named Brandon, I couldn't shake off the unsettling feeling that something was amiss. In the days that followed, I began to notice small discrepancies that set my mind racing. Hannah, my wife, who once greeted me with warm, genuine smiles, now seemed distracted, her responses fleeting and laced with an uncharacteristic urgency. I recalled the night of the family barbecue when her laughter had sounded forced and her eyes darted away whenever I tried to catch her gaze. The suspicion grew like a silent storm within me, and I started monitoring her routine more closely. I began by discreetly noting the times she left for her lesson planning sessions and the subtle changes in her tone when she mentioned meeting colleagues. At a parent-teacher evening last week, while everyone else chatted amiably, I noticed Hannah's phone light up repeatedly, her eyes narrowing as she read messages I couldn't hear. That night, as I lay awake, my thoughts spun with possibilities. Had she been meeting someone behind my back? The thought gnawed at me until I decided to gather evidence. I made casual inquiries with some of her close friends and even observed her routine at school, noting every unusual delay. My heart pounded with a mixture of anger and disbelief each time a new detail emerged, feeding my growing conviction that she was cheating. One evening, after an especially long day at work, I confronted Hannah as she sat in the living room sorting through some paperwork. I tried to keep my tone even though my inner turmoil threatened to spill over. "Hannah, I've noticed you've been out later than usual, and your phone. It's been busy a lot lately," I said, forcing calm into my voice. She looked up, surprise flickering across her features before she masked it with a quick smile. "Oh, Kyle, you know how busy school can be. I'm just coordinating with colleagues and planning lessons," she replied, her tone too breezy to be genuine. But I pressed on, my mind swirling with memories of the ticket and the elegant note. "It seems a bit more than that sometimes. I saw that ticket. Care to explain?" Her smile wavered, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw a flash of guilt in her eyes. "That was a gift from a friend, a token of appreciation for some extra work I did," she said hurriedly, avoiding my gaze. The answer felt too rehearsed, too vague, and my suspicions deepened. I started cross-referencing her schedule with what she told me, and soon enough, I discovered inconsistencies. A day she claimed to be at a school meeting overlapped with a call she received at an odd hour, and a message from a number I didn't recognize arrived during one of her busy afternoons. Each piece of this puzzle intensified my inner debate. Was I overreacting, or was this the tip of an iceberg of betrayal? My emotions ran high, and I planned to gather more evidence, determined to catch her in the act. For days, I quietly observed, making notes, and even setting up subtle digital reminders to revisit her phone notifications when she wasn't looking. Every minute detail fueled my suspicion that there was another man involved, someone named Brandon, perhaps, who was not merely a friend but something far more intimate. However, as I continued this investigation, the trail grew muddled. One afternoon, I confronted a close friend of hers at a local cafe, hoping for some clarity. "Have you noticed anything unusual with Hannah lately?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. My friend hesitated before saying, "Now that you mention it, she did seem a bit stressed last week, but she's been busy with organizing a surprise for our colleagues. You know how she loves planning parties." Those words struck me unexpectedly. Could it be that my mounting suspicions were based on misinterpretations, a coincidence rather than a betrayal? I tried to recall more clearly. Her late nights might have been due to the extra hours she put into planning the school's annual event, and the mysterious messages could have been related to logistical details for the surprise. My heart, which had been racing with anger, began to slow its frantic pace as doubt crept in. Had I been too quick to assume the worst? That night, as I sat alone with my notebook full of observations, I reread every entry and found that the evidence was ambiguous, open to innocent explanations. The elegant ticket and note, which had ignited the spark of suspicion, might have been a kind gesture from a colleague who appreciated her hard work, a gesture that I had misinterpreted. I realized with a sinking feeling that in my quest to expose betrayal, I might have fallen prey to my own fears. With a heavy mix of relief and regret, I decided that for now, I would hold off on any drastic measures. The truth, I concluded, might not be as nefarious as I had imagined. My suspicions, though once searing, began to cool as I saw the possibility of misunderstanding. I resolved to give Hannah the benefit of the doubt. If indeed there was something more behind her behavior, I would address it openly. If not, I would work to restore the trust that had begun to crack under the pressure of my own doubts. In that quiet moment of introspection, I promised myself that I would remain vigilant but fair, letting the truth emerge naturally without the distortion of my own suspicions. I began to notice a shift in Hannah's behavior that renewed my doubts. It wasn't a single glaring incident, but a series of small, almost imperceptible changes that made me wonder if I had been too quick to dismiss my suspicions. Over the course of a few days, I observed her closely, how she'd suddenly become more secretive about her phone, how she would leave a room with a hurried excuse when someone entered, and how her laughter at gatherings felt a little too rehearsed. One evening, while she was out preparing for a school event, I found a text message notification on her laptop that I wasn't supposed to see. The message was brief, simply reading, "Don't worry, I've got everything covered," and was sent by someone with an unfamiliar name. I tried to brush it off at first, thinking it might have been a mix-up related to her work, but the timing was off. It came at a moment when she had insisted she would be busy planning and not have time to interact socially. My mind whirled with possibilities. Perhaps it was related to the gift from Brandon that I had replaced earlier, or maybe it was something entirely new. I scribbled down the time and date of the message, determined to compare it with her schedule later. That night, as I sat in my study with the sound of rain pattering against the window, I replayed the day's events in my head. Every detail felt like a puzzle piece. I remembered how, during dinner with a few friends, she had casually mentioned that she was meeting someone to discuss a new idea for the school play, a remark that seemed oddly enthusiastic for something so mundane. Was it possible that this new reason was merely another excuse to mask something deeper? My thoughts were interrupted when I decided to bring the matter up during a quiet moment at home. I approached her gently in the living room, trying to sound concerned rather than accusatory. "Hannah, I noticed a message on your laptop today. It mentioned someone taking care of things. What was that about?" I asked, watching her reaction carefully. Her eyes flickered with surprise, and she hesitated before replying. "Oh, that? It was just a colleague helping me with some ideas for the upcoming play. Nothing to worry about." Her voice was smooth, too smooth, and I felt a chill despite the warmth of the room. I pressed on, "It just seems like you're involved in more than just planning. You seem distracted lately." She laughed it off lightly. "I've got a lot on my mind with the new projects at school. You know how it is." But her dismissive tone did little to quell my unease. Over the next few days, I watched her more intently. There were moments when I caught her glancing at her phone with a look of apprehension, and times when she would suddenly change the subject whenever I mentioned her extra commitments. I began to wonder if this was a new layer of deceit. Each inconsistency added to my growing list of questions. At one point, while reviewing our home security footage to check a minor incident, I noticed a brief clip of her leaving the house at an unusual hour, a time when she claimed she was at school. The footage wasn't clear enough to confirm anything definitively, but it added a perplexing piece to the puzzle. I felt torn between confronting her immediately and continuing to gather more evidence. My heart told me that the truth was still hidden beneath layers of half-truths, and I needed to be sure before taking any drastic action. I decided to intensify my monitoring, jotting down every detail, every strange phone notification, and every inconsistency in her stories. With each passing day, my suspicion grew, yet so did the possibility that I might be misinterpreting harmless coincidences. In the quiet solitude of my study, as I compiled my notes and reviewed the timeline of her activities, I could feel the tension building, a mixture of resolve and uncertainty. I wondered if this new evidence was a genuine sign of betrayal or simply a miscommunication. Despite the lingering doubts, I knew I had to proceed cautiously. I made a silent promise to myself that I would uncover the truth, no matter how deep it was buried. As I closed my journal that night, the question lingered in my mind. Was this new thread of evidence just another innocent detail, or was it the key to unraveling a web of deceit that I had long feared? I resolved to keep watching, waiting, and recording, determined that by tomorrow, I would either find a clear answer or have to face the possibility that my suspicions were, once again, unfounded. I became increasingly convinced that Hannah's evasive behavior masked a secret she was desperate to hide, and every day brought me closer to the edge of certainty. I spent long evenings poring over my notes, cross-referencing her whereabouts and the inconsistent details of her stories. The evidence was subtle. A missed phone call here, an unexplained delay there, but it all wove together into a tapestry of suspicion that I could no longer ignore. One evening, as I sat in my study reviewing the timeline I had compiled, I noticed that on the nights she claimed to be attending school events, there were gaps that could not be explained. My pulse quickened as I imagined what might be happening during those unaccounted-for hours. I began to plan a way to catch her in the act without alerting her, determined to see the truth for myself. "I can't keep living in doubt," I muttered to myself, the sound barely rising above the hum of the night. My mind raced with scenarios, each more damning than the last, until I decided on a plan that combined patience with stealth. I started by discreetly checking our security camera footage from the living room and the back door, focusing on the nights when she was supposedly at the school meeting. The footage, grainy as it was, seemed to confirm that she left the house at odd hours, never returning until well after midnight. My anger simmered as I realized how deeply her deception had cut into our life. At the same time, I arranged to have my phone's tracking app activated on her device without her knowledge, gathering location data to see if it aligned with her alibis. One night, while reviewing the data, I noticed a pattern emerging. Her phone had been in a part of town I didn't recognize, far from the school, during one of her supposed busy evenings. My heart pounded as I considered the implications. Clearly, something was amiss. I decided that if I was going to catch her red-handed, I had to be prepared for the worst. I began to monitor her behavior even more closely, noting every subtle change. A hurried glance at her phone, a sudden pause when someone knocked on the door, a whispered conversation that ended too quickly. I even ventured into places she frequented, blending into the background at local coffee shops and parks near the school, all while my mind churned with determination and a hint of dread. Then came the night that would change everything. I had arranged a plan to follow her discreetly. I pretended to have an errand in town and trailed her at a safe distance as she drove off in her car. Every turn and every pause was meticulously noted, and my heart raced with both anticipation and apprehension. My phone buzzed incessantly with location updates, and I watched in a mix of horror and grim satisfaction as her route veered away from her usual patterns. It led her to a quiet, upscale neighborhood where I knew there was a private residence often rented for events. The data confirmed that she parked her car and lingered near a side entrance of a well-manicured house. I parked a short distance away and waited, my breath visible in the cool night air, each minute stretching into an eternity. My mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, anger, betrayal, and a desperate need for the truth. As I peered through the window of a nearby building, I saw her silhouette moving with an urgency that made my blood boil. There she was, stepping into that house with a resolve that left no room for denial. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I realized that my worst fears were about to be confirmed. In that moment, every sacrifice, every doubt, every sleepless night of uncertainty led to this climactic point. I grabbed my phone, ready to record the evidence that would, at last, unveil the full extent of her betrayal. My heart hammered in my chest as I whispered to myself, "Tonight, the truth will be revealed." And with that, I prepared to confront the reality that had haunted me for so long, knowing that whatever I discovered would change everything. I waited in the shadows of a deserted parking lot near the upscale residence, my pulse steady, yet every nerve alight with anticipation. The night was cool, and the distant hum of city traffic barely penetrated the silence that enveloped me. I had tracked Hannah's movements for days, and tonight, every detail of my investigation converged at this moment. I knew exactly where she was supposed to be, inside that private residence, where secret meetings had taken place time and again. My phone buzzed with the final location update, confirming her arrival. I slid down from my car and crept toward a side entrance, every step calculated and quiet. Peering through a frosted window, I could see the soft glow of lamplight inside and silhouettes moving behind drawn curtains. There she was, unmistakable even from a distance, standing close to another figure. My heart pounded, not with sorrow, but with a cold, determined anger. I had long since decided that any plan of confrontation would be delayed until I had secured every shred of evidence. I could see Hannah laughing softly as she leaned toward her companion, who was casually dressed yet exuded an air of confidence. I knew that man well. It was Brandon, my own sister's husband. The sight of them together, so nonchalant and comfortable, sent a shiver down my spine. I activated the recording function on my phone, capturing every moment as if etching the betrayal into permanence. I listened carefully as they exchanged quiet words, their voices mingling in a secret language meant only for each other. "I can't believe how easy this is," Brandon remarked with a low chuckle, and Hannah's response was a soft, conspiratorial laugh that made my blood boil. My inner voice roared, "This is it. Every lie, every false promise, all leading to this moment." Yet, I remained still, blending into the darkness, my face unreadable. I knew that now was not the time for an outburst. I needed to gather clear, indisputable proof before I made my move. I watched as Hannah reached out, touching Brandon's hand briefly, a gesture that spoke of shared secrets and mutual complicity. Her eyes, normally so warm when they met mine, now glinted with an intensity that confirmed my worst fears. Every detail was etched in my mind. The way she moved, the subtle shifts in her expression, the unmistakable intimacy that betrayed years of deceit. I remained hidden for what felt like hours, every minute stretching out as I recorded the evidence that would later serve as the cornerstone of my revenge. At last, as the clock ticked past midnight, Hannah and Brandon seemed to finish their covert rendezvous. They parted with a lingering look, and I knew that the moment had passed. I quietly exited my hiding spot, my mind already racing with plans for what was to come. I felt a cold clarity settle over me, a final, unyielding resolve that no amount of charm or excuse could erase the truth. "Tonight, you have sealed your fate," I muttered under my breath, my tone void of regret and filled solely with the weight of justice long deferred. As I drove away in the quiet darkness, my recording secured and my notes complete, I realized that the pain of betrayal was now my stepping stone. I would use this incontrovertible evidence to reclaim what was mine and to expose the false veneer of a life built on lies. The sting of deception had become a catalyst for my own liberation, and with every mile that passed, I felt further removed from the person who had once been deceived and closer to the man who now stood for truth. I spent days meticulously planning my revenge, each moment fueled by a cold, unwavering resolve that left no room for regret, only a burning desire to expose the betrayal that had tarnished my marriage. The revelation of Hannah's secret meetings with Brandon had shattered my trust, and now I was determined to turn that pain into a catalyst for justice. I began by transforming our shared home into a stage for my final act. I arranged for a private gathering at our beach house, a location that had unwittingly become the backdrop of her infidelities, and set everything in motion without raising any suspicion. Every detail was calculated. I ensured the place was spotless, with subtle lighting that created an atmosphere both intimate and foreboding, and I covertly arranged for a hidden camera system to capture every unfolding moment. I didn't act impulsively. Instead, I let my plans simmer until the perfect moment arrived. One crisp evening, as the waves crashed softly against the shore, I gathered all the evidence into one final presentation. Video clips, digital logs, and personal notes that painted a damning portrait of Hannah's double life. I practiced my speech in front of the mirror, rehearsing the lines that would cut through the silence of the inevitable confrontation. "Your lies end tonight," I whispered to myself with steely determination, the words reverberating in my mind as if echoing off the walls of a courtroom. I reached out to a trusted friend to help me secure the house for the event, ensuring that only those who were part of my carefully chosen audience would be present. The night of the gathering, I arrived early to oversee every last detail. The beach house looked serene under the moonlight, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions I felt inside. When the guests arrived, I greeted them with a calm smile, all the while knowing that the truth would soon be unveiled. As the evening progressed, conversation and quiet laughter filled the rooms, but an undercurrent of tension simmered beneath the surface. I watched as Hannah moved through the crowd with an air of feigned innocence, unaware of the trap that had been set. Finally, as the clock approached a predetermined hour, I gathered everyone in the spacious living room. The air grew heavy as I stood before them, my voice steady and commanding as I said, "Tonight, we all bear witness to a truth that has long been hidden in plain sight." With a deliberate motion, I connected my laptop to the living room TV, and the screen flickered to life, displaying the damning footage captured of the beach house. The room fell into a shocked silence as the images played. Hannah and Brandon, together in moments that betrayed every excuse she had offered, their faces frozen in expressions of intimacy and collusion. I could see Hannah's eyes widen in horror as the reality of the situation unraveled before everyone's eyes. In that charged silence, I spoke again, my voice resonating with finality. "Hope you two enjoy each other, because you've just lost everything." There was no need for further words. The evidence was irrefutable, and the impact was immediate. Murmurs of disbelief and murmurs of disapproval rippled through the crowd. I watched as Hannah's face turned ashen, and Brandon, caught off guard, tried in vain to salvage his composure. In that moment, my heart felt a profound liberation, a release from years of hidden pain and betrayal. I stepped back, my eyes never leaving the screen, as I realized that the act of exposing her deception had restored something I thought had been lost forever: my dignity. The guests began to disperse in quiet disbelief, and as I collected the evidence one last time, I knew that there would be no turning back. I had set my revenge in motion with a precision that left no room for ambiguity. My silence was now a monument to the truth, and I walked away from the gathering with a calm determination, knowing that the next chapter of my life would be built on the ruins of her lies and the promise of an unburdened future. I returned home from the final family dinner, the one meant to fix everything, and found the house shrouded in an eerie quiet that immediately told me nothing was as it should be. Earlier that evening, as I sat in our living room with Lily and a few close relatives, who had come under the guise of celebrating a new beginning, I had watched as Hannah desperately tried to apologize and mend the damage. She had pleaded tearfully, "Jake, please, I can change. I'll do anything to make it right." Her voice quivering with a mixture of regret and raw emotion that once moved me deeply. But as the night unfolded, her apologies came with a side of selfishness and excuses that made my heart feel colder than ever. I listened as she recounted the mistakes in a tone that hinted at her own entitlement, as if the consequences were simply an inconvenience in her otherwise perfect life. "You have to understand," she had said, her eyes searching mine for a flicker of compassion, "I was trying to secure a better future for us. Brandon, he made it all seem so effortless, so glamorous." Her words had stung, not because they were unexpected, but because they revealed a truth I had suspected all along. Her betrayal was not an aberration, but a calculated pursuit of something more enticing. That night, after the dinner ended in a stilted silence, I walked back to our study to collect my thoughts. I reviewed the evidence once more on my laptop, the video footage, the bank statements, every detail that had irrevocably shattered my trust, and I realized that nothing she said could undo what had been done. I heard footsteps in the hallway and looked up to see Hannah approaching, her face a mask of contrition mixed with defiance. "Jake, I know I hurt you," she began, voice trembling, "but I can fix this. We can start over. Just give me one more chance." I remained silent for a long moment, my gaze fixed on the evidence of our past, while she continued, desperation thick in her tone. "I love you, Jake. I've always loved you. Can't you see that?" I was trying to bring excitement into our lives. I thought it would make everything better. Her plea, however, rang hollow in my ears. Every word felt like another nail in the coffin of the trust we once shared. "Hannah," I said, my voice calm and devoid of anger, yet as cold as the steel of the blade, "I don't need you to fix anything. I don't need empty promises or half-hearted apologies. What I need is honesty, something you've refused to give me since the day your secrets began to unravel." The room was silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioner and the pounding of my own heart. Hannah's eyes flashed with anger as she retorted, "So that's it? After everything, you're just going to walk away? Her voice cracked, the vulnerability of her emotions clashing with an undercurrent of selfish pride. I took a deep breath, feeling every moment of our shared past and realizing that my life, my dignity, had been compromised by her choices for far too long. Yes, I replied firmly. I'm walking away. I refuse to spend another day in a home built on deceit. You chose your path long ago, and I'll no longer be dragged down by the consequences of your decisions. Tears welled in her eyes as she stepped closer, pleading, Jake, please don't do this. We can fix it, I swear. I'll change. But I shook my head slowly, a wave of finality washing over me. No, Hannah, I said, my tone final. Your words mean nothing now. I have spent too much time waiting for a truth that you never intended to share. I'm done. The silence that followed was absolute, as if the walls themselves absorbed every last echo of her desperate pleas. I walked steadily to the front door, not looking back, as I felt an overwhelming mix of sorrow and liberation. Out in the cool night air, with the faint glow of streetlights marking my new beginning, I knew that my future lay not in the shadows of a broken promise, but in the bright light of a life rebuilt on truth and integrity. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like, and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.